I think that one of the reasons why we developed into what we now call human is we have this need to know, and as we learn, the first place to know is, of course, the internal mind. That's where you are. That's where the processes are taking place, and you become aware of the mind. You're consciously aware that there's an I there. There's something there, even if it's just a reaction to the processes, a feedback loop type thing. There's still something there to know. And I think our desire to know first leads us to realize that we exist, that we become aware of our conscience. And I think this need to know continues. It progresses. It gains some knowledge, but it's not satisfied with just having that knowledge. It always needs to know. It's a continuing process. And I think that's a good thing. So the need to know, we know that I know that I exist, you know that you exist. We have that internal awareness. But it also develops further in the concept or the understanding, the knowledge that there is an other. There is the other outside of us. There is someone besides myself who exists. And I'm aware of that. So I've developed the awareness of the other. I have this desire now to know the other. That's why we communicate with each other. That's why we're social animals. We want to know the other. And I think once we realize that there is the other, we come to accept that, we learn about them, the underlying need to know is still not satisfied. It's always there. It's a continuing process. So this need to know becomes even more expansive. We want to know not only our internal self, that we exist, not only do we want to know that there are others like us that exist, but there is a universe out there. There's something that's other than the two things that we already know. And so we search for it. We seek it. It's part of our makeup. It's part of what makes us human beings. It's part of the description of our mind. It's a physical property, I believe. It's a result of a physical property. I truly believe that. We are physical beings living in a physical world. We are natural beings living in a natural world. And I believe that everything is in fact natural, that there is no truly supernatural, that what we call supernatural now, 100 years from now, we'll probably understand better, and it'll be part of our worldview of nature. We'll understand it. I mean, at one point the stars were considered supernatural, the heavens were supernatural, and we have such a fantastic understanding relative to that now than we could have imagined back then. So there probably really is no supernatural. It's just our lack of understanding in the natural world, causes us to place many things outside the natural world, give explanations that are supernatural, extra-natural. And I think in our concept of searching for the other, and searching for this knowledge of what the world out there is, that we, in fact, one of the things that happens is that we get into the metaphysical, if there was the other, if the other meant, once I discovered myself and then I went on, and the second step was that I discovered that the other meant that there were people outside of myself, then obviously based on experience, the other, which I'm still seeking, must in fact be something like what I just discovered. You are like me, so the other that goes beyond you and me is most likely like me, like you. It's not quite that way, but I think that's one way to look at it. And so going along those lines, we tend to put titles on it like God and Spirit and that type of thing. And I think that's not a bad thing, because by questioning, by thinking that there is in fact something beyond what we've already discovered, we can learn. If we take the opposite view and say, what we know now is all that there is, and that's it, we'll never go anywhere. We'll have reached a dead end, and that's not what we're programmed to do. We're not programmed to reach a dead end. We'll always question. No matter what answers we find, we'll always have more questions based on our answers. We'll always keep going. And so I don't think it's a bad thing. So in and of itself, the physical things that cause us to go in the direction of religion are not bad. They're not, that part of us is not a mental disorder, not a mental disease. But I do think it's a real thing. I think it's a real construct. Some people have it more than others. Some people are more religious. Some people are less religious. Some people are more empathetic with others. Some people are less empathetic. It has a lot to do with, sociopathic personalities who have no real connection to the other of the human being next to them. And I think that's the same way with the God thing, is that most of us, in fact, can have this sense of the other, and we continue to explore it. Some of us have absolutely no sense at all, and we're content. We stop right where we are. We don't believe in God. It's no problem. It's no issue. There just isn't anything beyond, and we're satisfied with that. But I think it's based a lot on our brain structure, the chemicals and the responses, etc. Where I have come to the conclusion, or where my hypothesis is developing, is that all this stuff is not necessarily bad or evil or anything like that, or a mental disorder even, but it's has the potential. And I think it's when it takes advantage of the potential to be a disorder that we have problems. It's just like a cell in your body. A cell in your body is a good thing. It develops, it grows, it multiplies. All of those are a part of its nature, and that's a good thing. And we're not going to say that the nature of the cell is bad. But a cell can also become cancerous, and it can multiply profusely. It can crowd out other cells. It can destroy other cells, and eventually it destroys the life of the organism it belongs to. We call that cancer. And I think the same thing happens if we're not careful. I think the same thing can happen with the virus, whatever. I know that's a little bit different than the original concept I said, but I think that's what can happen when we take this underlying nature that we have, this needing to know, wanting to experience the other. I think that can be taken in a direction that in fact is leading us to the same analogy as the cancer cell. And that's when it becomes a disorder. And I think the best way to look at it, the way that I look at it, is that yes, religious belief in something that is not, that you have absolutely no proof for. I'm talking about empirical evidence, not that it feels good, that it resonates with you, that it makes sense emotionally to you, or that a book 2,000 years old says it's that way, or that so many billion people think that way, therefore it's right. None of those things. I'm talking about real evidence. Like, I'll think of something that in fact is a good example that I'm talking about for real evidence, and maybe I'll put this in the tape. But there needs to be empirical evidence that we can all agree on, that is agreeable to all as evidence. And there is nothing in religion that is agreeable to all. Therefore, there is no evidence, no empirical evidence that can be unquestioned by everyone. That means there is no evidence of God. There is, or of a theistic being, of a deist being. There are feelings, there are thoughts, there are hopes, wishes, dreams, but there's no empirical evidence. So if you are going to, once again, I said it's all right for you to believe what you want to believe. I have no problems with that. What I have a problem with, where it becomes, the cancer cell, you can have benign cancer. You can have a benign tumor, that's what I mean, a benign tumor or a malignant tumor. A benign tumor really doesn't belong there, and really isn't part of what makes you a healthy physical being, but it's also not hurting you. A malignant tumor is in fact bad, and you can have benign religion. You can gain things from religion. It's not the religion itself, it is your using the tool. We can use things that in one sense are in fact bad and negative. Someone who doesn't have the I can't think of specific examples in my life or famous people. Helen Keller.